If you're interested in supporting the channel, there are two things you can do. Flipside Gaming is offering a 10% discount for any order $10 or more if you use the promo code VOIDMAGE on their website. That is VOIDMAGE in all caps. I will also have an affiliate link to tcgplayer.com. If you use that link, any purchase you make on that website will go towards supporting the channel. I appreciate the support. Also hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Hello everyone, welcome back to another top 10 Commander video. Since we received Commander 2019, we have more Jeskai cards. The previous video I did make about Jeskai was only able to do a top 5, so I am happy to say this is going to be an actual top 10. Jeskai is kind of a mixed bag of things. You'll sometimes see some really competitive decks, but there's also a pretty cool political sub-theme with a lot of cards. And this comes from the Commander set in 2011, where the whole deck was called Political Puppets. As always, I'm going to start it off here with the honorable mentions. There's only a couple because still there aren't that many Jeskai colored cards. Jeskai Charm is one of the more inferior charms from Kcar. Probably the best thing about it is that you can give all of your creatures +1/+1 in lifelink. That might come in handy, but pretty much every other thing it does can be done better by other cards. And Flying Crane Technique is a pretty nice combat trick card. It could also be used defensively. It does pair up pretty well with Prowess, which a lot of creatures from the Khans block had Prowess. Giving them things like Double Strike really adds up. So, number 10 is Numa the Devastator. So a lot of these dragons from Planar Chaos, they have a damage triggered ability with an activation cost. This activation cost of 3 is going to let you destroy 2 target lands, which can really be annoying if you want to keep that pressure on your opponents. Keeping them a couple turns behind you is so oppressive. But thankfully in Commander, you do have multiple opponents, so the chances of this keeping someone down, really oppressing them, is not going to be as much as something like an Armageddon, which is going to destroy everything. There are actually quite a few land destruction decks. People don't like playing against it, by the way. But if you're using this as utility to get rid of something like a Reliquary Tower or a Gaia's Cradle, something that's really good, you probably don't want to have out there, I think Numa is a pretty solid dragon. And the number 9 is Rohan of the Fomori. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you choose an opponent at random, and Rohan attacks that player this combat if able. A 7/7 for 4 mana is pretty good value. You're going to notice a political sub-theme with these cards from Commander 2011. If you have a big creature in Voltron decks, you usually have the benefit of targeting an opponent who's also been dealt commander damage previously by that same commander. With Rohan, it's not always a guarantee. You may have to swing Rohan at an opponent with blockers that are capable of killing him. So in the same deck, you're probably going to put some good equipment, anything to get damage through. The reason why I like Rohan of the Fomori is that it's not like your typical Voltron strategy. People are a bit more forgiving. They're sometimes willing to let Rohan stay on the field because it's not personal. So if you wanted to change it up a bit, Rohan is one I would recommend for Voltron. Number 8 is Jeskai Ascendancy. This is a really underrated card and pretty nasty when you consider combo potential because you do untap creatures. So if you want to explore some really janky storm decks, Jeskai Ascendancy is a pretty interesting card to look into, but on its face, it's still a pretty good card if you want to embrace the prowess strategy of Kcar. You want to be attacking a lot, this will allow you to untap your creatures so you can leave up blockers while also adding to whatever prowess you might already have. Not a perfect fit in every deck, which is why it's a little bit lower. Number 7 is Xuyun, the Silent Tempest. One of the most underrated commander options for Voltron. It's because Double Strike is a nasty keyword when you can also add +1/+1 for every non-creature spell. And Xuyun, while he doesn't have the hexproof that another Kcar commander has, he still makes a pretty viable option if your main win con is dealing the 21 commander damage. If you wanted to make a prowess deck, I think Xuyun is probably the way to go because you just have that ability to give a creature double strike. So it would probably be one of the quicker commanders on this list to deal that damage. And then number 6 is Zedroo the Great-Hearted. That political puppets deck introduced a lot of political cards, and Zedroo being probably the most memorable. What you get off of her is one of the first group hug style commanders, or at least a commander that was designed to be group hug. We've had things like Feldegriff before. Zedroo is meant to just give your opponents some of your cards. Now this could be turned into a hateful deck. There are a ton of interesting ways that you can punish your opponents by giving them relatively useless creatures or creatures that actively harm them. You could also just give them something like a Howling Mine thing that doesn't really matter if it's in your possession or not. Cards like those are pretty easy to just give away, and it'll still count towards your upkeep goals of gaining life and drawing cards. A lot of directions you could go with Zedroo. It could just be Jeskai control, but whatever you really choose to do, it's going to be a more political experience compared to other commanders, and that's really what a lot of people fell in love with that 2011 commander deck for. Then number 5 is the new card Pramukh Sky Rampart. Speaking of a more political experience, you have a card that is literally inspired by politics, or at least that's what most people think. It's a legendary wall commander, and you get to choose left or right, which is kind of political. Each player can only attack the nearest opponent in that chosen direction, and the same goes for their planeswalkers. While it's not nearly as interactive as Zedroo, it'll definitely have a bigger impact. Pretty much works like a funnel where you get to have someone attack you that doesn't really have a good creature presence, while also making it so that whoever has the biggest board is in your other direction, the one that you're attacking. If left alone, the impact is going to be assured. People usually have to consider dealing with a Pramukh that could probably come back a couple turns later, or deal with the opponent that's likely attacking them. So they could either just resent someone who's forced to attack them because they're the only opponent they can attack, or they'll deal with the Pramukh. A massive dilemma for a lot of people that don't have a bunch of removal, because while dealing with Pramukh, they could probably just leave alone an opponent who's going to attack them anyway. Very interesting card, one of the most well-designed ones from Commander 2019. Number 4 is 7, the Chronicle Azzam. I love Flashback, and this was one of my favorite commanders from the whole set. Commander 2019 gave us commander options that were more focused on mechanics, which is a big deal because that's what you want to build your whole deck around, the actual play. And getting to copy the cards that you flash back from your graveyard, or really just any spell that you cast from your graveyard, is ridiculously underrated. Commanders like these are going to age well because you know things like flashback are going to make a comeback. We're going to have spells that you can cast from the graveyard, and having kind of a protection built in where 7 can't be dealt damage is incredibly beneficial. This means you can use things like Blasphemous Act to wipe the board while also keeping your commander out there. While in terms of power, may not be the most powerful, but one that I have no problem going back to in the future. And then number 3 is Kcar Wind's Fury. An all-around pretty good card in Jeskai, because there are many Jeskai decks that just specialize in spell slinging. You could also throw it into a 7 deck, because most flashback cards are going to be instants and sorceries, and in a similar way to why certain cards like Talrand are popular in those decks, it's just board presence. You're usually going to suffer compared to other decks who are capable of getting much bigger creatures out there. For every non-creature spell you're going to be casting, you're going to also get a spirit. It does really help if you want to optimize this kind of deck, that you also have the ability to sacrifice a spirit for red mana. Gives you some storm potential. A very good card that you could just build a tame deck around, and I think it'll still be fun for you. But if you want to go more competitive, Kcar is a pretty good one to go with. And then number 2 is Gnarset Enlightened Master. In terms of just pure power, Gnarset may be the most powerful card in Jeskai. A lot of that has to do with the built-in hexproof. The rest of the deck can be as quick as some competitive EDH decks. The whole thing you really expect to see is just a bunch of extra combat spells and extra turn spells that you're going to get off the top for. Doesn't always work, which is why some of the best Gnarset decks include nothing but those cards and fast mana. It has been for a long time one of the most hated commander options because of that strategy. But I still think Gnarset is one of the cooler commanders because of the built-in hexproof. And guys, you can actually play Gnarset in a more casual way. Even though you don't get to show off as much, you could just make a combat trick deck, and that could be a way to fool around with prowess with something like Xuyun. You don't need that many keywords because she already has hexproof. But just a very powerful commander option nevertheless. It has been a presence in the format for a long time now. But the next commander option, I think, kind of takes over in terms of power and also fun. I think there are different directions you can go with Elsa of the Infinite. You get the prowess mechanic back, but you get to look at the top card of your library at any time, which is a ridiculously underrated thing to have on the field. You pretty much have a maximum hand size of 8, while also being able to fix whatever the top card of your deck is. Sometimes it's good to just cast spells off the top of your deck, so that you find something even better after that. You get to cast those non-creature, non-land cards as if they had flash, which pretty much means you can cast planeswalkers, enchantments, artifacts, instants, and sorceries. That's ridiculous. You have so many options here. If you want to build the most competitive deck in Jeskai, you probably have your commander option here. A bunch of fast mana works out perfectly with prowess because a lot of things, mana crypt, are zero-costed artifacts, so you could definitely deal commander damage pretty easy with Elsa, but you also have the obvious storm interaction there. It's a little bit easier to get through your deck if you can just look at the top card of your library and then cast it with flash. You could also just build a deck that incorporates just about every other card on this list, and I still think it's going to be a blast while also being pretty powerful. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think about these top 10 Jeskai cards. You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.